10 years after the Battle of New Geneva, the galaxy was divided. 6 empires had signed treaties with humanity, choosing peace over war, trade over conflict, survival over pride. But 11 empires refused to accept this new reality. They looked at humans with fear and hatred, seeing not a potential ally, but an existential threat that must be destroyed. Before it grew to powerful, Supreme Archon Zethral of the Vorn Empire stood before the assembly of the 11, a gathering of the most powerful beings who had rejected peace with humanity. His species was ancient and proud, conquerors who had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 50,000 years. And he would not bow to creatures who had only recently learned to walk upright. The humans multiply like insects, he declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. Every year they claim new worlds. Every year their fleet grows larger. Every year they become more dangerous. If we wait, they will consume us all. We must strike now together, or we will fall separately. The 11 empires voted, and the decision was unanimous. The Galactic Purity Alliance was born. Zethral assembled a fleet of unprecedented size, 10,000 warships from 11 different species, each one eager to prove their superiority over the upstart humans. Scouts mapped human territory, spies gathered intelligence, and war plans were drawn with careful precision. The humans had 30 colony worlds now, defended by a fleet of perhaps 500 ships. The Alliance would attack 6 colonies simultaneously, overwhelming the defenders with superior numbers, cutting humanity's territory in half, and forcing them to surrender or face extinction. It was a perfect plan, logical and efficient and impossible to counter. But the Alliance had made a critical error. They thought they understood humans. They had studied the Battle of New Geneva, analyzed human tactics and weapons, prepared counters and responses. They believed they knew what humans were capable of. They were wrong. The attack came on a day humans would never forget. Alliance fleets dropped out of hyperspace above 6 colonies at precisely the same moment. Thousands of warships filling the skies, weapons charging, demanding immediate surrender. 5 colonies were evacuated in time, their populations fleeing to bunkers and emergency shelters, waiting for the coalition fleet to arrive. But the 6th colony, Horizon's Edge, was not so lucky. The Alliance commander at Horizon's Edge was a Vorn admiral named Kethrin, and he had decided to make an example. When the colony refused to surrender, he did not wait for the human fleet. He did not attempt occupation. He simply gave an order that would haunt the galaxy forever. Glass the planet. 4 million humans died in less than an hour. Men and women and children. Entire families vaporized by orbital bombardment. Cities turned to ash and glass. A world transformed into a tomb. The Alliance expected this atrocity to break human spirit, to show them the futility of resistance, to convince them to surrender. They did not understand humanity at all. When news of Horizon's Edge reached Earth, there was silence, a terrible silence that spread across every human world. Every ship, every station. People stopped what they were doing and listened to the reports, watched the footage, saw the burning world where 4 million of their brothers and sisters had died. And then the silence ended. Coalition President Marcus Webb, the same Marcus Webb who had escaped to Draxthari prison, with a broken utensil addressed humanity with cold fury in his eyes. "They have murdered our children," he said. "They have burned our world. They believe this will make us afraid. They believe we will surrender. They are wrong. From this moment forward, we are at war. Not the limited war we have fought until now. Total war. Absolute war. War without mercy. War without end. War until every empire that raised a hand against us is ash and memory." The coalition did not defend its remaining colonies. The coalition attacked. Human fleets appeared above Alliance homeworlds. Not military targets, but everything. Shipyards where warships were built. Farms that fed populations. Power stations that lit cities. Communication networks that connected governments. Everything burned. The Alliance had expected humans to fight like every other species, to protect territory, to negotiate when the cost became too high, to behave rationally. But humans were not rational. Humans were grieving. Humans were angry. And human anger was the most terrifying force in the galaxy. Admiral Okonkwo, now supreme commander of all coalition forces, led the assault on the Vorn homeworld personally. His fleet carved through Vorn defenses like a blade through paper. His soldiers landed on the surface and marched toward the capital, and nothing could stop them. Supreme Archon Zethral watched from his palace as human troops fought through his personal guard. These soldiers were not like any warriors he had faced before. They were faster, stronger, enhanced with technology that merged metal and flesh. They did not stop when wounded. They did not retreat when outnumbered. They simply kept coming, relentless and unstoppable. Zethral was captured alive, dragged before Colonel Okonkwo, the Admiral's son, who had volunteered for the ground assault. "Why?" Zethral demanded. "Why do you fight with such savagery? We are warriors. We understand war, but this is something else. This is madness." Colonel Okonkwo knelt before the fallen Archon, his armor splattered with Vorn blood, his eyes empty of mercy. "You killed 4 million of our children," he said quietly. "Did you think we would forgive that? Did you think we would forget? You do not understand what we are. We are humanity. We hold grudges for generations. We carved vengeance into an art form before your species learned to use fire. You wanted war with humanity? Now you have it, and you will choke on it." The Vorn Empire fell in 8 months. 3 more empires collapsed within a year, their governments overthrown, their militaries destroyed, their populations left to rebuild under coalition supervision. The remaining alliance members watched in horror as human fleets moved from world to world, unstoppable, unforgiving, a force of nature that could not be reasoned with or appeased. One by one, they sent messages of surrender. The war was over, but humanity's lesson was just beginning. The galaxy would learn that humans could be the greatest friends or the most terrible enemies, that human loyalty was unbreakable and human vengeance was eternal, that the species from the Death World had not come to join the galactic community. They had come to rule it, and anyone who threatened their children, their worlds, their future, would discover exactly why Velkrith had warned the Conclave so many years ago. The humans were here, and they would never be underestimated again. 15 years had passed since the destruction of the Magellan, and humanity had not been idle. The rescued prisoners of Kelvox had returned home as heroes, their stories spreading across Earth and the 12 colony worlds that now bore human life. Every child knew the name of Captain Elena Vasquez. Every soldier swore to honor her sacrifice. Every scientist worked harder knowing that the galaxy was watching. The United Earth Coalition had formed in the wake of first contact, old nations setting aside ancient rivalries to face a common threat. The petty conflicts that had defined human history suddenly seemed foolish when measured against the vastness of hostile space. And in the darkness between stars, humanity had built a secret fleet, 200 warships, hidden in asteroid fields and lunar shadows, each one designed with a single purpose, each one crewed by volunteers who understood they might never return home, each one carrying weapons that would make the Draxthari look like children playing with toys. But humanity was not the only power that had been busy. The collective of Myron had watched the confrontation between humans and Draxthari with calculating interest. The hive mind species saw in humanity not a threat, but a resource. These resilient creatures would make excellent biological components for their ever-expanding collective. The Myron did not think as individuals. Millions of organisms connected through organic networks, sharing thoughts and memories and purposes. They had absorbed hundreds of species into their collective, adding each one's strengths to their own. And humans, with their remarkable healing abilities and adaptable biology, would be the greatest addition yet. They chose the colony world of New Geneva for their harvest. New Geneva was a farming world. Green fields and gentle hills and small towns where families grew food for the other colonies. 200,000 humans lived there, most of them farmers and teachers and engineers, peaceful people who had never fired a weapon in anger. The Myron fleet arrived without warning, 500 bioships descending through the atmosphere like a swarm of locusts, each ship carrying thousands of drones ready to capture and process the human population. The colony had no military, no warships, no defenses beyond a handful of security officers with sidearms. The Myron expected the harvest to be complete within hours. They were wrong. Governor Sarah Chen stood in her office watching the alien ships darken the sky, her hands trembling, her heart pounding, but her mind clear and focused. She had read the reports from the Draxthari incident. She knew what these creatures wanted, and she knew surrender was not an option. She activated the emergency broadcast system and spoke to her people. Citizens of New Geneva, we are under attack. The aliens have come to take us, to absorb us into their collective, to erase everything that makes us human. We have no fleet, no army, no weapons of war, but we have something they cannot understand. We have each other, and we will not go quietly. Across the colony, humans responded. Farmers who had spent their lives nurturing crops picked up hunting rifles and formed militia units. Engineers who had built irrigation systems now built bombs from fertilizer and fuel. Teachers who had educated children organized evacuation routes and communication networks. Doctors prepared field hospitals in basements and caves. The Myron drones landed expecting terrified civilians waiting to be collected. They found hell. The first wave walked into kill zones, mowed down by crossfire from humans hiding in buildings and trenches. The second wave triggered improvised explosives that turned entire landing zones into craters. The third wave found their water supplies poisoned, their communication lines cut, their flanks attacked by humans who appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. The hive mind was confused. How could these creatures fight without a central intelligence coordinating them? How could individuals make tactical decisions without consulting the collective? How could they sacrifice themselves for others without hesitation or fear? The Myron had encountered resistance before, but never like this. Every human seemed to be their own commander, adapting to circumstances, improvising solutions, fighting with a creativity that the hive mind could not predict or counter. 6 weeks passed. 40,000 Myron drones lay dead, killed by farmers with rifles, by children with thrown rocks, by grandmothers with kitchen knives. The colony was battered and bleeding, supplies running low, hope fading, but still the humans fought. And then, on the 43rd day, the sky filled with light. The United Earth Coalition fleet had arrived. 200 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly above New Geneva, their weapons already charging, their crews already at battle stations. Admiral James Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the flagship, the UES Vengeance, watching the Myron bioships scramble to respond. All ships, he said, his voice calm and cold, weapons free, leave nothing alive. The Battle of New Geneva lasted for hours, but it was decided in the first for minutes. Human warships unleashed technologies the galaxy had never seen. Rail guns that fired slugs at a fraction of light speed. Missiles that split into thousands of independent warheads. Energy weapons that cut through bioships like knives through flesh. The Myron fleet tried to flee, tried to surrender, tried to reason with the humans through desperate broadcasts. The humans did not respond. They simply killed. Every bioship was destroyed. Every escape pod hunted down. Every Myron organism in the system eliminated with methodical efficiency. When it was over, the void around New Geneva was filled with debris and frozen bodies. Admiral Okonkwo broadcast the battle footage across all galactic frequencies. Every species with a receiver watched humans tear apart an invasion fleet, watched the cold precision of human vengeance, watched and understood that something had changed in the galaxy. 6 empires immediately contacted the coalition requesting non-aggression pacts. The Silurian Dominion, who had tried to warn everyone a century ago, sent a simple message to the remaining empires who had laughed at Ambassador Velkrith. We told you, and you laughed. You are not laughing now. On New Geneva, the surviving colonists emerged from their hiding places to greet their rescuers. Governor Chen stood among the ruins of her capital city, surrounded by the dead and the wounded, and she wept, but they were tears of pride, not sorrow. Her farmers had held off an empire. Her teachers had commanded armies. Her children had fought like warriors. 200,000 civilians had done the impossible. And when help finally came, they had still been fighting. Admiral Okonkwo landed personally to shake her hand. Governor Chen, he said, what your people accomplished here will be remembered for 1,000 years. You showed the galaxy what humanity truly is. She looked at the Admiral with exhausted eyes. "What are we?" she asked. He smiled, a grim expression without warmth. "We are the species that does not surrender. We are the species that fights to the last breath. We are the species that turns farmers into soldiers and children into heroes. We are humanity, and God help anyone who forgets it." The message was clear. The lesson was learned. Humanity was no longer a primitive species to be harvested or enslaved. Humanity was awake, and the galaxy would tremble. The Grand Conclave Station floated at the center of the galaxy like a metal flower, blooming in the darkness of space. Its 17 rings spinning slowly around a massive central sphere where the rulers of known space gathered to decide the fate of civilizations. Ambassador Velcroth of the Silurian Dominion walked through the golden corridors with heavy steps, his 4 eyes scanning the faces of delegates from a dozen different species, who passed him without a second glance, their minds occupied with trade agreements and border disputes and all the small matters that seemed so important to them. None of them knew what he carried in his data crystal. None of them understood that everything they knew was about to change forever. The chamber of the 18 empires was a vast dome decorated with the flags and symbols of every major civilization in the galaxy, from the crimson banners of the Draxthari hegemony to the living vine flags of the collective of Myron that pulsed with bioluminescent light. Each empire had its throne. Each throne held a being of immense power. And today Velcroth would ask them to feel something they had not felt in 10,000 years: fear. "The chair recognizes Ambassador Velcroth of the Silurian Dominion," announced the mechanical voice of the Conclave's ancient artificial intelligence, its tone flat and emotionless as always. Velcroth stepped into the center of the chamber, the light falling upon his gray-blue skin as he activated the holographic projector. Built into his ceremonial robes, a planet appeared above him, blue and green and white, beautiful in a way that made his stomach turn with dread. "Honored representatives of the 18 empires," he began, his voice steady despite the fear that coiled in his chest like a sleeping serpent. "I come before you today not with a trade proposal or a territorial complaint. I come with a warning that may determine the survival of everything we have built." Soft laughter rippled through the chamber. The Draxthari High Commander leaned back in his throne, with amusement dancing in his reptilian eyes. The Myron representative, a cluster of connected organisms that thought as one, pulsed with colors that indicated boredom. Velcroth ignored them and continued. 3 cycles ago, our deep space scouts discovered a planet in the outer rim, a world called Earth by its inhabitants, and those inhabitants call themselves humans. He manipulated the hologram, showing images captured by Silurian surveillance drones. Images of human cities and human vehicles and human beings going about their daily lives. The other ambassadors watched with mild curiosity, seeing nothing remarkable in these soft-skinned bipeds. "They appear primitive," observed High Commander Thralox of the Draxthari, his voice a deep rumble that echoed through the chamber. "Barely capable of reaching their own moon. What threat could such creatures possibly pose to empires that have conquered star systems?" "That is precisely what I intend to explain," Velcroth replied, his voice growing more urgent. "Earth is what we classify as a Class 7 death world. Do you understand what that means?" Silence fell over the chamber. Even the most arrogant representatives knew the classification system. Class 1 worlds were paradises, gentle and nurturing. Class 7 worlds were nightmares, planets so hostile that the evolution of intelligent life should have been impossible. "Their world is covered in predators," Velcroth continued, cycling through images that made several ambassadors recoil. "Creatures with razor teeth and crushing jaws, venomous serpents and insects that spread disease. And the humans do not hide from these monsters. They hunt them. They keep them as companions. They call them pets." He showed an image of a human child hugging a wolf-descended creature that could tear the child apart with a single bite. "They consume poisons for pleasure, substances they call alcohol and caffeine and capsaicin, things that would kill most species in this chamber. And they laugh while doing it. They have competitions to see who can consume the most." The Myron collective pulsed with confusion, unable to comprehend such behavior. Their planet tries to kill them constantly. Earthquakes shake their cities. Storms of wind and water destroy their homes. Fire sweeps across their forests, and ice covers their lands. And what do the humans do? Velcroth paused for effect. They rebuild. Every single time. They rebuild. Resilience is admirable, admitted the crystalline ambassador of the Veth communion. But resilience alone does not make a species dangerous. Then let me tell you about their wars, Velcroth said, and his voice dropped to something barely above a whisper, forcing the assembly to lean forward to hear. Humans fight wars against each other. They have done so for their entire history. They have developed weapons capable of destroying their own cities, bombs that split atoms themselves, and they have used them. They looked upon weapons that could end their civilization, and they used them anyway. Now the chamber was truly silent. They heal from wounds that would kill any of us. They survive blood loss that should be fatal. They cut open their own bodies to repair damaged organs. They replace limbs with mechanical alternatives and continue fighting. I have seen footage of a human soldier continuing to battle after losing an arm. Velcroth turned slowly, meeting the eyes of every representative in the chamber. In less than 200 years, they went from riding animals to walking on their moon. Their rate of technological advancement is unlike anything in our records. Give them another century and they will discover faster-than-light travel. Give them 2 centuries and they will be at our borders. He deactivated the hologram and stood in darkness. I propose we quarantine the Sol system immediately. Surround it with a blockade. Prevent them from ever leaving their world. If we do not act now, we will face a predator species unlike any we have encountered. And I truly fear we will not survive the meeting. The chamber erupted in noise, some voices shouting in agreement, but far more laughing and dismissing his words. High Commander Throlox stood, his massive form casting a shadow across the chamber. The Solarians have always been cowards, he declared. These humans are nothing, fragile creatures with short lifespans and primitive technology. We have conquered 1,000 species. We will not cower before another. I vote against the quarantine. One by one, the other empires voted, and one by one, they rejected Velcroth's proposal. The final count was 17 against and 1 in favor. Velcroth gathered his robes and walked toward the exit. But he stopped at the door and looked back at the laughing assembly, at the arrogant rulers who could not see the storm gathering on the horizon. You will remember this day, he said quietly, but his words carried through the sudden silence. And when the humans come, and they will come, you will remember that I tried to save you, and you will weep. He left the chamber, and the laughter resumed behind him, but it sounded hollow now, uncertain, like children laughing in the dark to hide their fear of what might be hiding in the shadows. 83 years later, they would remember, and Velcroth would be proven right, but by then, it would be far too late. The stars had barely changed in 83 years, but everything else had. High Commander Throlox, the same Throlox who had laughed at Velcroth's warning, in the Grand Conclave now stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crushing Fist, watching his tactical display with the casual confidence of a predator who had never known defeat. A single vessel had breached Draxthari space near the border world of Kelvox, and the ship was unlike anything in the Imperial database, ugly and crude, held together with what appeared to be welded metal plates, powered by engines that burned with chemical fire. What is that thing? Asked his second-in-command, a younger Draxthari named Kexiver whose scales had not yet darkened with age. Throlox examined the sensor readings and felt a cold feeling in his chest that he refused to acknowledge as fear. Nuclear pulse propulsion, he said slowly. They are riding explosions through space. Actual nuclear explosions. That is insane. That is human. The word hung in the air like poison gas. Every officer on the bridge had heard stories about the creatures from the Death World, stories that most dismissed as Solarian paranoia. But now one of their ships was here, real and solid and pushing through Draxthari territory as if it had every right to be there. Throlox opened a communication channel to his patrol fleet, 12 warships bristling with plasma cannons and missile batteries, enough firepower to glass a small moon. Surround the vessel, he commanded. We will capture it and study these humans. Perhaps they will make useful slaves, or at least interesting specimens for our scientists. The human ship, the sensors identified markings that translated roughly as UES Magellan, came to a stop as the Draxthari fleet encircled it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a transmission reached the Crushing Fist. A human female appeared on the view screen, her skin a warm brown color, her dark hair pulled back from her face, her eyes showing no fear despite the weapons pointed at her vessel. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth ship Magellan," she said, her voice calm and measured. "We are an exploration vessel on a peaceful mission. We greet you in the spirit of friendship and hope for beneficial exchange between our peoples." Throlox laughed, a harsh sound that made his officers shift nervously. "Friendship," he repeated, tasting the word like something rotten. "You have entered Draxthari space without permission. Your ship is now property of the hegemony. Your crew will surrender and submit to examination. Resist and you will be destroyed." Captain Vasquez tilted her head slightly, studying Throlox with an expression he could not read. "I would prefer to avoid conflict," she said, "but I must inform you that my crew will not surrender. We are explorers, not prisoners. Perhaps we can discuss this peacefully?" "There is nothing to discuss. Disable your engines and prepare to be boarded." The human captain nodded slowly, and when she spoke again, her voice had changed, harder and colder, like metal being drawn from a forge. "Then I am sorry for what comes next." The transmission ended, and the Magellan moved. Throlox had expected the humans to flee or surrender. He had not expected them to attack. The crude vessel launched a spread of missiles, primitive chemical rockets, tipped with nuclear warheads, and dove straight toward the Draxthari formation. "Destroy them!" Throlox roared. Plasma fire lit up the void. The Magellan twisted and spun through the barrage in ways that should have been impossible for such a bulky ship, its human pilot pushing the vessel beyond all safe limits, accepting damage that would have forced any Draxthari crew to retreat. The nuclear missiles detonated against Draxthari shields. One warship lost power. Another spun away with hull breaches venting atmosphere. And still the Magellan came on, refusing to die, refusing to stop. "What are they doing?" Kexiver shouted. "Their ship is falling apart." Throlox watched in disbelief as the human vessel aimed itself at his flagship, its engines burning at maximum power, its hull glowing red from plasma impacts, and he understood too late what Captain Vasquez had meant. "Evasive action!" he screamed, but the crushing fist was too large, too slow, and the humans were too determined. The Magellan struck the flagship at full speed, 200 human crew members choosing death over surrender. Their final act, a spear of metal and fire that tore through Draxthari armor and detonated the flagship's reactor. Throlox died in a flash of light, never knowing that his arrogance had just started a war that would reshape the galaxy. But not all the humans died. Escape pods had launched in the final seconds. 37 humans survived the impact and were captured by the remaining Draxthari vessels, taken to detention facilities on Kelvox, where they would be studied and interrogated and broken. Or so the Draxthari believed. The prisoners refused to cooperate. They gave only their names and identification numbers. No matter what methods the interrogators used, they revealed nothing about Earth's location or defenses or technology. One human, a young engineer named Marcus Webb, escaped his cell using nothing but a broken eating utensil. He killed the guards before being recaptured, and even then, BATN and bleeding. He laughed at his captors. "You have no idea what you have done," he told them through broken teeth. "You killed our people. You will pay for every single one." Another prisoner, a woman named Yuki Tanaka, was spaced as punishment for her resistance, thrown into the vacuum without a suit. The guards expected her to die in seconds, but she survived for over 2 minutes, long enough to be recovered when the watching scientists demanded she be saved for study. She woke up in the medical bay, damaged but alive, and her first words were a promise: "I will watch your empire burn." Reports of these incidents spread through Draxthari military channels and eventually reached the Silurian Dominion, where an aging ambassador Velkrith read them with grim satisfaction. He composed a single message and sent it to every species that had voted against him. 83 years ago, the humans have arrived. They have proven everything I warned you about. One ship held your fleet at bay. 37 prisoners have made a mockery of your interrogators. This is just the beginning. Prepare yourselves, or do not. It no longer matters what you do. On Kelvox, the human prisoners waited. They knew Earth would come for them. They knew rescue was impossible. They knew they would probably die in these cells. But they also knew something their captors did not understand. Humans never forgot their own. Humans never abandoned their people. Humans carried grudges across generations and repaid debts of blood with interest. Captain Vasquez had sent a final transmission before the Magellan struck the crushing fist. A burst of data aimed at Sol System, containing everything the humans had learned about Draxthari space, their defenses, their weaknesses, their arrogance. In the shipyards of Earth, in the factories of Luna, in the orbital stations of Mars, humanity was building. They were building weapons. They were building warships. They were building vengeance. And when they came for their people, and they would come, the Draxthari would learn the most important lesson in the galaxy. Never give humans a reason to hate you. Because human hatred burned hotter than stars, lasted longer than empires, and consumed everything in its path. The war had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. 50 years had passed since the end of the Purity War, and the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. The 18 empires that had once ruled known space were gone, not destroyed, but changed, absorbed, integrated into something new, something that would have seemed impossible to anyone who remembered the old ways. 7 former empires had joined the human coalition as full members, their species living alongside humans on hundreds of worlds, their cultures mixing and blending and creating something neither purely human nor purely alien. Children of different species grew up together, learned together, played together, and thought nothing of it, for empires had become protectorates, maintaining their own governments under coalition guidance, rebuilding what the war had destroyed, learning to be part of a larger family. Their people had feared humans once. Now they celebrated human holidays and taught human languages in their schools. 3 empires had signed alliance treaties, remaining independent but closely connected, trading freely, defending each other, bound by ties of mutual respect that had grown from the ashes of conflict. 2 empires existed as diminished remnants, small pockets of territory where the survivors of failed conquests rebuilt their shattered civilizations. They were not punished or oppressed. Humans had proven their point and moved on, preferring to heal wounds rather than salt them. And 2 empires were gone entirely. The Vorn and the Myron had pushed humanity too far, had crossed lines that could not be uncrossed. Their species still existed, scattered across the galaxy as refugees and wanderers. But their empires, their glory, their pride, all of it had been erased from history. Ambassador Velkrith of the Silurian Dominion was very old now. His scales faded to pale gray, his fur eyes dimmed by age, his movements slow and careful. He had outlived everyone who had laughed at him in the Grand Conclave. He had watched every prediction he made come true, and now he had been invited to Earth for a ceremony he never expected. The shuttle descended through white clouds into a blue sky, and Velkrith pressed his face against the window like a child seeing wonders for the first time. Earth was beautiful. He had studied this world for over a century, had read every report, examined every image, analyzed every detail, but nothing had prepared him for the reality. Green forests and blue oceans and cities that sparkled in the sunlight, and everywhere, the signs of life. The shuttle landed in a city called Geneva, named after the colony world that had changed everything, and Velkrith was escorted through streets filled with beings from a dozen different species. Humans walked beside Silurians. Draxthari children chased Veth crystalline constructs. Even a few reformed Myron individuals moved through the crowds, no longer part of a hive mind, learning to be persons for the first time. Is it always like this? Velkrith asked his escort, a young human woman named Elena, named after Captain Vasquez, as so many human women were now. Like what? Ambassador? So mixed, so integrated. I expected to see humans ruling, aliens serving. That is how empires work. That is how they have always worked. Elena smiled, an expression that still seemed strange on human faces, showing teeth that had once torn flesh from prey. We tried ruling through fear, she said. It did not make us happy. We found that we prefer ruling through friendship. It is more work, but it lasts longer. The ceremony was held in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Human Coalition, a massive building that had been constructed specifically to house representatives from every member species. Velcroth walked through corridors lined with flags and banners, symbols of 100 different civilizations united under a common purpose. He was guided to a central stage, where thousands of beings waited, humans and aliens together, watching the ancient Silurian take his place of honor. Coalition President Sarah Chen, the former governor of New Geneva, now leader of the largest civilization in galactic history, stepped forward to address the assembly. 150 years ago, a young ambassador stood before the Grand Conclave and warned them about humanity. He told them we were dangerous. He told them we should be contained. He begged them to listen, and they laughed at him. She paused, looking at Velcroth with respect and gratitude. They were fools, but Ambassador Velcroth was not. He saw what we were before we knew ourselves. He tried to prevent the wars that killed billions. He tried to save everyone, including us, and for that, we honor him today. A medal was placed around Velcroth's neck, the Coalition's highest honor, given to a being who had tried to stop humans before they conquered the galaxy. The audience erupted in applause, humans and aliens cheering together, and Velcroth felt something wet on his face. Tears. He was crying, something Silurians almost never did. He stepped forward to speak, and the hall fell silent. I remember the day I warned the conclave, he began, his voice thin with age but steady with emotion. I remember their laughter. I remember their arrogance. I remember thinking that they were signing the death warrants of their entire civilizations. And I was right. He looked across the assembly, at the faces of species that should have been enemies, that had been enemies, now sitting together as family. But I was also wrong. Surprise rippled through the audience. I told them you were dangerous. That was true. I told them you should be feared. That was true. But I did not understand the full truth. I saw the predator in humanity. I did not see the rest. He raised one trembling hand, pointing at the mixed crowd before him. I did not see that you could forgive. I did not see that you could build as well as destroy. I did not see that you would take your enemies and make them family. I warned them that you were terrible. I did not know that you were also magnificent. Tears flowed freely now, from human eyes and alien eyes alike. You conquered us, yes, but then you lifted us up. You shared your technology, your medicine, your knowledge. You taught us that strength does not require cruelty, that power does not require oppression, that an empire can be built on love as easily as fear. He spread his arms wide, embracing the entire assembly. I spent a century afraid of humanity. Now I spend my final years grateful for them. You are the best thing that ever happened to this galaxy, and I am honored to have witnessed your rise. The applause was thunderous, lasting for minutes, waves of sound that shook the walls and filled Velcroth's hearts with joy. Later, after the ceremony, he stood on a balcony overlooking the city, watching ships rise into the sky, human vessels and alien vessels flying together, carrying beings to worlds beyond count. Elena stood beside him, saying nothing, letting the old ambassador have his moment. I spent my whole life trying to protect the galaxy from humanity, Velcroth said quietly. I was so afraid of what you might do, what you might become. And now? Elena asked. Velcroth smiled, an expression he had learned from humans. Now I think the galaxy was always broken, divided and fearful and cruel, and humanity was the medicine we needed. Painful to swallow, but healing in the end. He watched a ship bearing Silurian markings rise alongside a human transport, both heading toward the stars, both part of something larger than themselves. Perhaps being conquered by humanity was the best thing that ever happened to us. Elena placed a hand on his shoulder, a human gesture of comfort that felt natural now. We did not conquer you, Ambassador. We adopted you. There is a difference. Velcroth laughed, a sound he had not made in decades. Yes, he agreed. I suppose there is. The sun set over Geneva, painting the sky in shades of gold and red, and Ambassador Velcroth watched the lights of the city flicker to life below. 1,000,000 beings of a dozen species living together in peace. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed it. And despite all the blood and pain and loss, the future was brighter than anyone had dared to dream. This was the new order. This was humanity's legacy. This was the beginning of something wonderful.